It's day one of the 10 days of protest that has been declared, and we're seeing that the road was relatively free on the way to work this morning, and there are videos yesterday of security personnel that were deployed. Nigerians have been reacting to a lot of all that's been happening concerning the protest, and we'll be bringing you updates in this regard as to what exactly the situation is like in different parts of the country. I am Olive Emodi. You're welcome to Breakfast Central. And I am Osaogi Ogbowan. Great to have you join us. Remember to be a part of the conversation in the second half when the phone lines are open as we review the newspapers and share with you what the major stories are making headlines across Nigeria today. Yes, just like Oliver said, there's been many reactions, from Nigerians concerning the protest. It's very peaceful on the roads this morning. It feels like it's a public holiday. I came out and I was a bit shocked, like they declared public holiday today, and then I remembered, it's day one of protest. Like everyone just seems to be at home. It does seem like there's a bit of tension in the air. Lots of people don't know what to expect, how today is going to turn out. So it's more like the whole Nigerian saying of better safe than sorry. It's not the Nigerian saying, but yeah, better safe than sorry. So people would rather be at home and watch to see what day one looks like. Also to mention that it's still another day to remind us that we are struggling with, beyond all the other challenges that we have regarding poverty, people not being able to make ends meet, power. So whilst people have money those who even have money to buy power cannot afford to buy power. And I fall into the category of people who have not been able to load electricity for the past 4 days. I called the Electricity Distribution Company. It does seem like all the distribution companies cannot provide token. They can't generate token now. So what they're saying is that they're having issues and they're having challenges and they're working hard to resolve it. So imagine not being able to generate power or not being able to load power because even though you've paid and you've been debited, your bank has been debited, the distribution company cannot generate power, and then you have to run on generator, but you cannot get petrol because there is petrol scarcity and the queue is crazy. That is the reality of what it is to live in Nigeria.
I didn't even know that there was a problem like that.
If you just pray that your power your unit doesn't run out. Once it runs out and you try to reload, there'll be a problem. I have done it 3 different times. Two separate times, and my friend tried the 3rd time, and they debited each time. Until now, nothing has been done. I called, and I actually have evidence, to support that. I called Electricity Distribution Company, and they said, "We're sorry, we're working really hard." And I've spoken with a few people. Now, you don't blame Nigerians when a number of people then come up to say all these are actions that they are using to sort of make people maybe scatter people in a way,
that doesn't make sense.
So for me, it's a shame. It's a huge shame that a nation will be thrown into darkness. Because that's what it means. If everybody in Nigeria runs out of power at the same time, we all will not be able to load.
I don't know that it is a nationwide problem. It might be a problem with the Ikeja, which covers Lagos.
So even if it's just Lagos State is covering, it's still a shame.
Yeah,
the whole of Lagos,
I agree with you. I'm just saying.
I went on X to check if it was just me, and I've seen different people in different parts complaining and, just lamenting about the same thing.
Yeah. I think the only challenge here is how long it's taken to resolve. If they have a technical glitch with their software that they normally use to generate, electricity codes, then, there is that. But should it take 4 or 5 days? Should it take a week to sort that out? That's where, for me, the problem is. And I hope that they're working on it, seriously. But yes, it is day one of what, is meant to be a maybe 10-day protest. There have been reactions from the Nigerian people and from the Nigerian government. And of course, a lot of people yesterday, I saw the supermarket having to stock up, just in case supermarkets have to be closed going forward. No one expects that it would be that bad. And of course, I don't expect that there would be any crisis. We're also encouraging everyone who might be participating or not participating in the protest to ensure that it remains peaceful. And that has been the plea from ourselves and, of course, from the Nigerian government, that it remains peaceful. There's also been ways that, it looks like the police have been antagonizing, protesters, showing a show of force and whatnot. But regardless of what side that you're on and regardless of, how you interpret the actions of everyone, we would just please encourage that, the days going forward remain peaceful. I've, mentioned yesterday, and of course I'll continue to ask, that we still haven't heard from Mr. President. The person who campaigned bitterly, campaigned for many, many months, went across the nation seeking the votes of the Nigerian people, has finally become president, and we still haven't heard from him. We still haven't heard his views concerning the protest, still haven't heard his views concerning how Nigerians are feeling and the reality that Nigerians are complaining about. We still haven't heard a word from Mr. President.
Maybe his governors are speaking on his behalf, because we're starting to see a number of them addressing. We've seen governor, it's not governor, but technical governor of the FCT, His Excellency, the Minister of the FCT, Nyesom Wike. We've seen the governor of Lagos State. A number of them are speaking, but yes, the truth is, where is the governor? Because even in their speeches, they will allude to the fact in Governor Sanwo-Olu's speech, for example, he did say that we're under the leadership of a courageous, either a brave or a courageous leader, is what he referred to President Bola Ahmed Tinubu. So whilst you're advocating for this protest to not happen because you do not think that the protest is what we need at this time, it's important that the leader of the nation, the one who has been in many circles, been dubbed the father of the nation, comes and speaks to the people. And
I feel it shows a complete, at least or a partial, just the way that it seems, that it shows a disregard for the Nigerian people and for the grievances the Nigerian people have, that, the grievances that they have with the government. That's the way that, it looks. That if people have said that they are hungry, they are tired, they are frustrated, they cannot feed, they can't send their kids to school, transportation costs are high, electricity costs are high, and they really need a break, and they're willing to go out there and peacefully protest, that the person who is the #1 person in leadership in the country still hasn't found it within himself, and the people who are around him still don't think that it's important that he speaks to Nigerians and addresses their challenges. And I've said it, all through the week, that spokespersons and governors and, traditional rulers would not do. They wouldn't be able to tell the message that needs to be told. The president himself needs to address Nigerians. He needs to at least regard Nigerians and their grievances, worthy enough for him to speak to Nigerians. And just like I said yesterday on Which Way Nigeria, it's either there are no words
or maybe
convincing enough.
He's not available.
No, he is available.
No, not available physically. Like maybe he's not been in the best state of health. Maybe.
No, I don't know. I don't think that's what it is. Because he was at the FEC meeting. But the thing is, it's either there are no words that are, good enough to convince Nigerians that they are in safe hands, like I've been saying,
or they just don't care,
or the president just doesn't, think that it's important, and his handlers don't think it's important that he speaks to Nigerians at this time. Maybe because they don't expect that the Nigerian anger, the Nigerian grievance, the Nigerian expression of their frustration would, go any far.
Oh, well, but they do know that it has the potential to go out of hand. They know that, I believe that the government understands the power that the people wield, which is why you start to see all of them. I don't think they've spoken as much as they have in the past few days, trying to dissuade people from protesting, even the show of force and all of that.
Except
the person who should speak, right. So the show of force, the deploying of military men, it started days ago, about a week ago. I remember seeing about over 10 police vehicles and armor tanks. Yeah. It's just to let us know that there are security forces on ground. Anyway, regardless of what side of the divide you are on, in support or against the protest, or protesting to prevent the protest, we're going to be analyzing and explaining what the rights of these protesters are, what the way out is, and we'll be having guests join us on the show this morning. Now, to share with you what our stories are, let's take a look at our top stories. Police deployed across states as Nigerians begin protests today, the 1st of August. And that's true. Welcome to a new month. Federal government lists achievements, pleads with Nigerians to cancel protest. Now, still looking at the protest conversation this morning, hardship protests will make or mar Nigeria, Shehu Sani says. And now we'll also be looking at Nigerians divided as nationwide protests begin today. The conversations today is all about the protests, and the newspaper front pages we're setting will also cover the conversations about the protest. But first, let's bring you breakfast headlines.
We begin breakfast headlines in the west of Nigeria, where the Lagos State Police Command Anti-Bomb Squad has deactivated an improvised explosive device in the Ikeja area of the state. The State Police Public Relations Officer Benjamin Hundeyin confirmed this on Wednesday. He said the device, which was wrapped in a bag, was dropped on the roadside from an unregistered vehicle along Mobolaji Johnson or Mobolaji Bank Anthony Way. Hunde added that the residual components of the IED have been collected for further analysis and investigation. The area has been declared safe and normalcy has been restored. Now, in the meantime, a massive security presence has been deployed ahead of a nationwide protest by youths against hunger and bad governance in Nigeria. Security personnel have been deployed to strategic locations in the country where thousands of youths are expected to gather today for a peaceful protest against the rising cost of living, hunger, and perceived bad governance. The protesters, mostly young Nigerians, are demanding action from the government to address the country's economic woes, including high inflation, unemployment, and poverty. Now, away from that, the National Assembly has rescinded its decision on the amendments it made to the 2024 Appropriation Act by repealing and reenacting the law. The repealed and reenacted 2024 Appropriation Act now fully incorporates the 6.2 trillion naira President Bola Tinubu requested the National Assembly to add to the current budget on July 23rd to fund legacy capital projects and the new national minimum wage of 70,000 naira for workers. Recall that the addition had raised the amount of the 2024 budget from 28.7 trillion naira to 35.05 trillion naira. Let's also tell you that Aribim Chukwu, the daughter of Justice Rita Ofili-Ajumogobia, has been killed. The disease, popularly called Chuchu, was reportedly killed in her Parkview Estate residence in the Ikeja area of Lagos State on Wednesday morning. A family source who craved anonymity because of the current state of the family said she was murdered on Tuesday night and her body was discovered yesterday morning outside the gate of her residence. The source alleged that the new household staff might have been responsible. And our breakfast headlines continues in East Africa, where Sudan's Army Chief General Abdel Fattah al-Burhan was evacuated on Wednesday following a drone attack on a military base he was visiting in the country's east. The attack took place at the Gibet base, approximately 100 kilometers from Port Sudan, where the government aligned with the army has relocated amid the ongoing conflict in the capital, Khartoum. The army reported that 5 people were killed in the drone strike during a ceremony at the base. Witnesses confirmed that General Burhan managed to leave the site unharmed. And that's all on Breakfast Headlines. We, of course, will move back to Breakfast Central now and, of course, continue with our top stories. I am Osaugi Ogbawan. And now we get into conversations concerning, of course, the biggest story in Nigeria today, which is the End Bad Governance protest. We will be looking at the situation in different parts of the country. We're kicking off this morning in the southeastern part of the country, in Abia State, where Chinwe Ogele is live, and of course will be sharing with us details as to what's going on in Abia State. Good morning, Chinwe. It looks pretty peaceful over there. How are you this morning?
Good morning. I'm good.
Okay. It looks pretty peaceful in Abia this morning. It doesn't look like anyone is interested in a protest. Can you give us, updates as to what's going on?
Exactly what I'm saying, because I've tried to, visit a few places this morning, and I noticed that people are going about their business, and the road I'm standing on is one of the busiest in the town, yet is not as busy as it used to be every morning by this time. So it's quite peaceful. I haven't also seen presence of security operatives, all over the town. I haven't seen one yet. Probably I haven't got to where they are, but right now, as I speak with you, I'm close to Government House, but there's no security presence around here. I haven't seen people gathering. So people are just going about their business. It rained earlier this morning, just a while ago. It stopped raining. Probably it could be the rain, but we'll keep watching to see how it unfolds today.
Okay, were there any conversations in Abia State or in the southeast leading up till today? Were there any statements or signs that, you also had x-rayed that gave you the sense that people will be out in the streets today in Abia?
None at all. till now, we are yet to understand if people, if there were coordinators or organizers in this part of the country, because I haven't seen any own up to being involved in organization or coordinating the protest in the Southeast. So right now, everybody is still, we're just waiting to see what happens. So, but I believe that before 10 a.m. this morning, we'll have a clue to who, if they're actually going to participate in the protest, we'll know those that are at the helm of affairs.
Okay, all right. Sounds pretty interesting. But of course, it's still early in the mornings, just a little after 7 a.m. this morning. So we'll see how things play out in the next, maybe hour or more. And would love, to, of course, that you give us live feed once that, if anything changes, we'd love to hear from you.
Of course.
All right. Now, moving away from Abia State, we once again will be x-raying the End Bad Governance protest here and live in our studios. And of course, seeing how things are playing out across the country. Nigerians will be taken to the streets reportedly today, kicking off a nationwide protest movement demanding an end to bad governance. Nigerian youth, civil society groups are calling for President Bola Tinubu's administration to reverse some of its recent economic policies, especially the high cost of petrol. There's also been concerns that the protests will turn violent, and many groups across the nation have withdrawn from the protest action. Now, though the Nigerian government has made several moves to dissuade protesters, young Nigerians have insisted on proceeding with the demonstration today. We're going to be x-raying the little details surrounding the calls for a protest and the reaction of the Nigerian government to it. And of course, the possible details about what would likely come out or play out today in a bit. But that happens right after this very short break. Stay with us. We'll be back. Welcome once again to Breakfast Central. We, of course, are having discussions concerning the End Bad Governance protest that is meant to start this morning across Nigeria. We, of course, stopped by in Abia State with Chinwe Ogele, News Central's reporter who's there. And from what it seems, the last time we spoke to her, which is just a few minutes ago, there doesn't seem to be much going on there. Will Lagos be different? Will the Federal Capital Territory be different? Will, maybe things change in a bit? We don't know, but we'll see. But this morning, to x-ray details concerning the protest, we have joining us the Executive Director, Enough is Enough Nigeria, Opeyemi Ademolekun. Good morning, and thanks for joining us.
Good morning. Thanks for having
me. We'll probably just start with conversations concerning the idea behind the protest and your expectations for today. So let's first of all get your views on the need for a protest generally. And then what your expectations are, as things will turn out today.
All right. Just a caveat. I do work and serve at an organization called Enough is Enough, but we're not organizers. We're certainly amplifying the call for it because we believe citizens have the right to protest. I think protest usually becomes a tool of last resort when you don't believe that the government is listening. So you've written letters every day on any news show in Nigeria, on radio, on TV, print media, online. Nigerians are talking about their challenges. They're complaining in one way or the other. We're doing programs to talk about managing in hard economic times, blah, blah, blah. During June 12, Democracy Day, there were protests in terms of one, reminding people of the journey that we have a democracy, but also saying that things are hard. Now, if you take sort of the sequence of events of people complaining that things are difficult, cost of goods, and you feel that government is not responding, nothing is happening, nothing is changing, protests then become a tool of last resort in saying that, okay, you need to hear what we're saying. Yeah. So the notice was given, I'll call it a notice, about 4 weeks ago when the hashtag End Bad Governance started online. And there were a bunch of polls asking people what will your demands be. And that have just kind of snowballed over the last 4 weeks into what we now have, what we have now. What are my expectations? I expect it to be a bit different. As you rightly said, in different states, it will be expressed differently. Some states will have people turn out. Some states, maybe no one, maybe a few. But the states that will be interesting to watch will be Lagos, obviously, Abuja, Ogun, and Kwara, because those 4 locations have actually gotten judgments to restrict where citizens show up. So it'll be very interesting how that plays out.
Okay, we're going to talk about, even those judgments in a bit, but I've always, in the last couple of days, I have pointed out the silence from the Nigerian president, which, some people might say is irrelevant. He doesn't have to say anything. He's busy being president. So, I want to get your view on that. Is it important? Is that something that you've also noticed that is maybe unusual? That president has stayed silent, in the weeks leading to the protest, on the day of the protest, starting. There's not been actually, any word from Mr. President. How relevant is his speech at this time?
I think we talk about body language a lot. And for me, that's loud, in a sense. And it's loud because it just affirms that, as I say, he doesn't really care. In the weeks leading up to the protest, when the demand started unfolding, anyone that cares about citizens and even cares about not having a protest will then be interested in engaging and trying to do things to address concerns. However, what we've seen the government do, including Mr. President, is spend more time engaging stakeholders to stop the protest. So traditional rulers, religious rulers, youth groups, elders, whatever, trying to get them to stop the protest. Then we've seen government fund protesters to protest against not having a protest. And so when you invest time and energy in doing everything, and then fear-mongering, and so the last bit will be constantly referring to we cannot have a repeat of NSAS. We cannot have a repeat of the violent NSAS protests and the consistent use of the word violent with NSAS. And we constantly have to remind the federal government that there was no violence until the federal government unleashed the violence. In Abuja, there were brand new SUVs that dropped off men with machetes at protest grounds. In Lagos, it was the military that shot, as the Lagos NSAS panel found, and the ECOWAS court. And I remember in Lagos, at the time when we started noticing a breakdown of law and order, and we called the police and said, look, this is beginning to happen, as obviously there are criminals in every society. Yeah. And once you see a lax that, there's an opportunity to be a criminal, people will do that. It has nothing to do with protesters. And when we called the police to draw their attention, the rapid response squad in Lagos, the response to us very clearly was, you are protesting against the police. You say you don't want police, sort yourselves out. So, and that's the constant response for us to government, is saying it is your job to protect citizens. So if you spend more time focusing on the protest must be peaceful, people want to hijack it, there are foreign mercenaries, and don't spend the same amount of time using that intelligence to stop those people, then really it's almost like you're conniving with them by focusing on us.
There was also a bomb, that was found somewhere in Lagos yesterday.
Right.
How convenient.
Now let's share some breaking news before we come back to continue the conversation this morning. We have reports that fresh attacks have been announced in Borno State as IED has killed 19 people and injured 15 at a local tea joint in Kanuri. We'll bring more details later as our correspondent, Maru Musa, brings us more reports on that. But just to say to everyone in Borno State, please stay safe, and if you see anything suspicious, please do well to report to the nearest police station around you. Now, speaking about police station, let's talk about the role of the police. You did highlight that if they're getting enough intelligence regarding those who are potentially trying to hijack the protest, that they should probably be able to use that same amount of energy to ensure that they, forestall such attacks from happening. What I've been hearing a lot is a citation of Section 83, Sub 4 of the Police Protection Act, where they're stating that it is the role of the citizens to report their routes. Yes, but if I'm correct, if I may quote what I see there, I see Section 83, Sub 4 of the Police Establishment Act 2020, which provides as follows: where a person or organization notifies the police of his or its intention to hold a public meeting, rally, or procession on a public highway, or such meetings in a place where the public has access to, then the police officer then has the responsibility, goes for that to talk about the responsibility to protect such citizens. So now, what I see is that there have been several interpretations. Some people say that this means that citizens must report. Others say, no, it says where they report. So how do you balance the role that the police has in terms of ensuring that they protect the rights of citizens, the rights of protesters? Does this right to protect protesters includes even the protesters that are protesting against the protesters?
I think I mean, my own default is the Constitution. And it says very clearly, the security and welfare of the people shall be the primary responsibility of government. End. So when it comes to security, it's your responsibility. Figure out how to secure citizens. And I think which is why I said the focus on the fact that we have intelligence that they're potential hide. Okay, so then use that intelligence to find them and arrest them. Why are you making that my issue of why I cannot exercise my constitutional right to protest? And I think the back and forth of that and the fact that government has spent more time on that is where we are now, because that's been their focus. People want to hijack their miscreants, their criminals. Yes, they are. It's a society. It's your job to fish them out. Why are you using that? And I think that, and I keep talking about that because it's heightened the concern of citizens around what may or what may not happen. And in my view, it's also shown where the government is, because you've made that your focus rather than solving problems. And we keep going back to it. We will not even be protesting in the first place if society functioned.
Yeah.
Right. And even looking at those who have talked about the sponsors of protests and the intelligence that they have gathered. Peter Obi has been accused of being a sponsor of the protest. The Obedience have been accused of being sponsors of the protest. What is your response to that? And when we're talking about these people who are trying to hijack, who are these people that are really trying to hijack the protest? Are these the citizens, or are these some politicians who are manipulating the citizens to be able to achieve their own end?
Okay, so starting point, is there hunger in the land? Yes. Is the cost of living high? Yes. Do we have waste in government? Is government too big? Yes. So all these things are yes, yes, yes. Now, if those things are solved, we'll not have a need for a protest. In any government, in any democracy, you have the government that is in power and you have opposition. By default, when you point out what the government in power is doing that people don't like, opposition amplifies that because it makes a point for their case. That if we were in office, we would listen, we would do things differently. Is that new? Is that foreign? No. Might I remind us that in 2012, when citizens protested under the Occupy Nigeria protest, the same members of APC who were in opposition at that time amplified that protest because it met their need as opposition. Was there anything wrong with that? No. It was opportunistic, most certainly. But could they make the case that if we were in government, we would do better? Yes. That's the whole nature of politics. So accusing Peter Obi of sharing same values with the people who are protesting is par for course. It's expected. Now, when we now go to people who are sponsoring the protest, and I like how young people have responded. These are the sponsors of the protest. Bola Ahmed Tinubu because of your policies, Wale Edun because of this, and listing the fact that we're protesting because you have failed to do your job. So the fact that, and again, the fact that government has spent more time in looking for sponsors, in looking for saboteurs, in worried about criminals, rather than solving the problems, just for me says where their intent is. And this goes back to your question earlier, why the president hasn't addressed the country. Remember NSAS as well, it was a demand for Buhari to address. When he did make an address, he said nothing about the protesters, said nothing about what was happening, just kind of spoke about it, not around the issues that the protesters were talking about. So we're at the same point, I would say.
All right, so now let's also, get into another conversation, also around the protest. I don't know if we can point to these, and I think the producers can put this on screen, the 10 demands for the protesters. I think this came out, a couple of days ago. End bad governance protest, yes, exactly that one. So I don't know if we can hold on to this because there's no actual leadership, and nobody knows where this emanated from. Omoyele Sowore, who we spoke with yesterday, also had his own demands, there were about 15 of them. So let's look at some of them, right?
I will not speak to this, and I'll be very clear about that, because I think this is rubbish. Let me not say it that coldly. I think it's evolved, and I've seen a new one that has 10 that's a bit clearer, and I can speak to that because I've seen that, and I kind of align with what those demands are. So, for example, one of the demands of that is an implementation plan for the Orosanye report. One of the things that we've talked about is the size of government. And when the Orosanye report was published in 2012, we had about 540 odd departments, agencies, and parastatals. Now we have over 1,500. And so the demand, and then this administration is now trying to set up a new ministry of livestock or whatever. So again, when you're saying there's no money to do certain things and you're continually increasing the size of government, there's a discrepancy there. So the demand is an implementation plan for the Oronsoye report. One of the other demands is also around electoral reform, that results are it's mandatory, not optional, to transmit results. There's one that I particularly like around the Constitution. So we've talked about the fact that the Constitution is not of the people. We've talked about the 2014 Constitutional Conference report. I think the demand says that there should be an amendment to the Constitution, excuse me, that allows for referendums. So that means on certain issues, major issues like the Constitution, you can put it to the vote to Nigerians and they can easily say yes, no, without a long process. There's a demand to release NSAS protesters, for example, to listen to the ECOWAS judgment, and the states that had judicial panels to actually implement the findings from their panels, including paying compensation for those who had been affected. Insecurity is also a big one. We talk about the fact that we have police officers. There's a friend of mine that says police officers are available for rent. You can go into a police station and organize 2 police officers that you pay that follow you around. There's no... It happens. Right. Meanwhile, we say there's insecurity, and we say divert the appropriate resources to protect citizens. So those are the ones that I remember off the top of my head.
I know that your organization, EIE Nigeria, posted these 10 demands.
We retweeted.
Yes, we have hunger, hunger, cost of living insecurity, government waste, and cost of governance, bloated National Assembly, which speaks to the Oronsoye report you've talked about, which they had 12 weeks to implement, and we've not heard anything about. NSAS, protect farms and farmers, human capital development, electoral reform, establish a living wage, and constitutional and judicial reform.
That's the same one that was on the screen, isn't it?
No, it's not the same one.
Yeah,
it's a different one.
It's a different one. That one I think is also very interesting when we talk about the living wage instead of a minimum wage. In 2012, during Occupy Nigeria, minimum wage was 18,000 naira, which at that exchange rate was about $128. The new minimum wage we have now is 70,000 naira, which is about $46.
We've gone back.
Yeah.
So when you think about it in terms of context, it's not a living wage. Yes, it's a higher amount of money, but the purchasing power is much lower.
Okay, we're also looking at what these demands are. There's a fresh unofficial demand that we're seeing on social media, which is that Akpabio must go. He's been referred to as someone who has been careless with his words, insensitive to the plight of the Nigerian people. And very recently, there was a video that's gone viral. He said, and I quote, "We are not even interested in regime change. Those who want to protest should protest. We will be here eating."
I love it. And I think to be honest, and that point is actually very important about a new demand. What the protest has also shown, I think NSAS was, I've been part of Bring Back Our Girls for a long time. It's a single issue demand. Return the girls. NSAS was pretty basic. Scrap SAS and provide for security and stop police brutality. This bad governance, because it's so wide, everybody is speaking from their pain points. I was on a Spaces yesterday. By the time I dropped off, there were 25 demands. 25. And as I listened to people, it was just everybody was saying what was paining them that they wanted done. They must not, look at that, and I think this speaks to that exactly. By this morning, because of Akpabio's statement, this is now a demand. And to be honest, I think it's a demand that will be very easy to rally around. And for me, for Mr. Akpabio, one, the fact that he became a senator violated the electoral process because he should not have been eligible to run for office. And having then done that, he's now become the Senate president. And this is probably the third or fourth thing in a series of events. Natasha was the previous one that he had to apologize. Before that, I think he was also caught on camera, I think in that December, telling them that
prayers in your emails.
Exactly. Yeah. So there are just too many things about how, and let's not forget, if anything happens to the president and the vice president, that is our president by law. So let's be clear.
Yeah. So what are your expectations, right? It's meant to be 10 days. The president hasn't spoken. The NLC and the NMA and ASU, have the experience with dealing with the, Nigerian government. Whenever they choose to protest or they choose to go on strike, the government makes promises, everybody goes back to work, and then none of these promises are, met a lot of times. Do you expect it's the same thing that might play out, or do you, think that maybe, government is really just going to ignore, everybody and keep doing what they're doing?
I think they will try to ignore. That's my sense, because that's what they've done so far, is ignore and just either with court judgments or with intimidation. I mean, we saw the videos of, for example, Lagos Island, people being threatened if they come out to protest. What this will be a test of really just how tired Nigerians are.
All right.
Will people come out?
Let's see if people have.
And I think they will.
I'm going to get into,
We have
that.
our correspondent who's currently at Lekki tollgate. Hopefully they would allow him film this time. Bernard Akede is in Lekki at the tollgate. Good morning, Bernard. What is the situation there where you are? Bernard, we're struggling with your audio.
Hello, can you guys hear me in the studio?
Yes, please go ahead.
Okay, can you hear me now? I can hear you clearly.
Yes, we can. Go ahead.
All right, thank you so much. Good morning, guys. Of course, we're back here at the Lekki toll. You know, the nostalgia of all what happened yesterday. For those who missed it, we were supposed to shoot live at 6 p.m. on the 6 p.m. bulletin here. We had taken permission, as we usually do. We were granted 10 minutes to broadcast live, and then a police officer came. I want to believe it's misunderstanding. He came and disrupted our live broadcast. Got a little bit funny, but eventually we were able to speak to a more superior officer who allowed us, after several minutes, to go live and continue our broadcast. But all that is bygone. Now we're here today. Arriving in this place today, you know, the road has been really light. Remember that it's not a public holiday. Remember that there's been no curfew announced. Movement has not been restricted. However, I think it's just precautionary measures. That's why people are not on the road. If you are thinking of going out with public transport, you may have some difficulty going out to the streets of Lagos. Now, I'm going to start from my right, where we have an array of security operatives. There's a truck, well, you know, a truck from the Nigerian Army, or owned by the Nigerian Army, with Army officers standing by. I'm sure just, you know, in case anything goes wrong, they want to ensure that there's safety. Now, besides the Army officials, behind me you can see police officers dressed in their police uniform. We've seen men and women patrolling this area. We've also seen mobile police officers patrolling the area. We've seen officials of the NSCDC also in the area who have been moving back and forth just to ensure that everything is safe and there's no disturbance. We spoke to the person who's in charge of the mobile police team earlier this morning, and he said he just wants to be sure that our presence here will not attract unnecessary attention to the area. And we made it clear that that's not why we are here. Everything has been fine until something interesting happened. And I'll show it to you now. And I'm going to pan to my right. Very soon you're going to see a few men with some reflective jackets right there. I don't know if you can see them. Yes, these men came in vehicles, about 5 vehicles, 3 or 4 SUVs, and then 2 buses looking like commercial buses. Now, these men are wearing reflective jackets. On those jackets is written NURTW, National Union of Road Transport Workers. We're not sure what their mission is here, but they came here in buses and in SUVs. They're parked somewhere behind me. We're waiting to see what exactly it is, their purpose, what exactly their mission is here, as a matter of fact. But besides all of that, it is safe here at the toll gate. There's security presence. Vehicular movement, very light. Again, there is no curfew. It's not a public holiday, but I just want to believe that people are being cautious of their movements in and around Lagos. That's pretty much what's going on here at the toll.
All right, that's very interesting and nice way that you've also delivered that. It would be nice if you can speak with the NURTW men, you know, just to get a view of what they're there for, if they're going to be part of the protest, or if they have some, you know, traffic to control in that area this morning. So if you can speak with them, we'd love to hear what their stance is. Well, thank you very much, Bernard. We'll join you again. All right. Very interesting. Let's get back to you. I mean, your quick reactions to that, first of all.
Yeah, I mean, not surprising that traffic is light in Lagos. Traffic was very heavy last night as people made their way to shops and tried to get home, I would say. NURTW, I mean, I'm sure they're not there protesting.
Okay. I mean, does it also, you know, cause a distraction when there is, like you said, at the end of the spaces that you had yesterday, those 25 demands? We've also seen different.
I dropped off.
Oh, when you dropped off.
So it might have ended at 50, I don't know.
Yeah, but now there is the different ones, different
yeah.
lists. You know, Omoyele Sowore, like I said, you know, had his own list of 15, you know, which included scrapping the 1999 Constitution, releasing Nnamdi Kanu, unconditionally, reinstate a corruption-free subsidy regime to reduce hunger, just a lot of things, and banditry, terrorism, and violent crime. So does this create some confusion as to what exactly the protest hopes to achieve?
It does. It creates a bit of confusion in terms of, even from a government perspective, so what demands are we looking at? But I think ultimately for a government that is good intentioned, because at the heart of all of this is people are just complaining that there's bad governance and lack of accountability. So if that is responded to in a clear manner and communicated clearly, I think it would help take the edge off, because people would see that government cares. And there are institutions, I mean, we all have representatives at the national level, at the state level. We have local government chairmen, there are community leaders. If those processes are engaged to let people know that these actions are being taken, we're protecting farmers, we're dealing with NSAS protesters. I mean, so clear actions can be taken for government to show good faith. If government doesn't want to show good faith, they will harp on the fact that there are too many demands, we don't know who we're talking to, we're looking for, there's no leader. And that constant conversation of there's no leader. Release NSAS protesters. Why do you need a leader for that? Like, what is a leader supposed to do for you? Next question should be, where are they? Can you produce a list? And if you're given a list, release them. Why do you need a leader to do that? So this constant thing about facelessness and leaderlessness, in my view, as a ruse not to do anything, also speaks to lack of intent.
Are we starting to see some level of inconvenience? I won't say inconvenience, but I think, speaking out loud, I would say, are we starting to see an increase in that happening around the continent? Because in the most recent time, it was Kenya, and then we heard of Uganda, and then there's Ghana now that we're starting to see an unplanned protest. Even speaking about unplanned protests, there are those who feel that these protests would have been more effective if the notice wasn't too long. It was such a short notice and everybody hit the streets, but that they worry about the effectiveness of the protests going forward. Do you share such concerns as well?
Maybe, and I think part of it is also the challenge of not having. So if it was a name like Labour can call a protest in 4 days because they have the foot soldiers to make that process go through around the country. This started off on social media. So to garner kind of momentum to get people gingered does need a bit of more lead time than you would if you had through an organized process rather. And as people gained momentum, people then became more aware that, okay, that is true. I am upset. I do want to express myself. So yeah, it has its pros and cons. But as I said at the beginning, government has actually done a lot more in terms of publicizing this protest than we could have done ourselves on social media.
Well, what would it signify if we don't see, at the end of today, numbers out protesting? What would that mean? Would that signify that there's many more people who are content with the way the government has handled the current Nigeria, or there's just not many people who care that much about protesting? And what would it also mean going forward?
Well, I don't think that people not protesting means that they support that their quality of life is good. I think that one, I don't need a protest doesn't validate what data shows, that the cost of living is high and people cannot afford to eat. So you not coming out to protest doesn't tell me that that's not the case. 1, 2, does it mean that some people don't believe in protests and some people will not come out, and that's fine. We all have our constitutional right. The protest has been scheduled from August 1 to 10. So I would say that what happens on day 1, it's the beginning. NSAS did not get to how it ended from day 1. Yeah. The momentum built over time. And I just think it'll be interesting to see how this builds over time, because government's response also will influence how citizens choose to respond.
And you mentioned earlier how Labour is able to garner crowd because they have a lot of foot soldiers. And this is, of course, a protest that started from social media. Labour has dissociated itself from this protest. Will that have an impact on the protest?
I think what's interesting is, again, let's remember Occupy Nigeria. Occupy Nigeria was started by citizens who, when the fuel increase was announced, took to the streets, to your point, spontaneously. It wasn't planned. There was no long lead time. Labour joined them when they realized that the narrative had gone beyond them. Like, it was more or less like watching people gather, and we're like, wait a minute, they didn't call us, they don't need us, we have to join. And I see that being a possible outcome of this as well. Because again, part of the demand affects them in terms of a living wage. When they did sign with government the 70,000 naira, the NLC president came out and said it was sort of agreement under duress to bring the impasse to an end. So if part of the demand is that realizing that this is not a living wage and people are willing to protest for you on that, it might be an incentive to join at some point.
All right. Now, I think yesterday I did see this, I'm not sure who the first page that shared it, but it's from the President Bola Ahmed Tinubu Media Center, Trust the Process. And it does like a comparison between then and now when they got into office. It says then foreign reserves, $34 billion, now $37 billion. Minimum wage, 30,000 naira, now 70,000 naira. Ways and means, debt, 27 trillion, now 16 trillion. Even if there's, also an appeal to move it to 10%. $7 billion forex backlog. It, then says now it has been cleared. Oil production was 900,000 barrels per day. Now it's 1.6 million barrels per day. Debt to revenue ratio 97%, now 64%. Are these convincing?
Not at all. Because at the end of the day, they're figures that don't translate into my quality of life. So, and I think let's also not forget, it's quite, I think, very trite for the Tinubu administration to compare. It's the same APC administration. And I think also let's not forget that last year during elections, even though the outcomes of the elections were contested, what was clear and cannot be contested is that more people voted against APC. So if you add all the non-APC votes, they by far outstripped the number of votes that APC got. So I think in terms of a referendum on how APC performed, people voted against APC, but we do have an APC government. Now, reserves, all of that, yeah, there might be the numbers on a piece of paper, but as corruption increased, yes. Has anybody been prosecuted for it? No. Is the cost of living high? Yes. Is insecurity high? Yes. So they can do their list of what they think they've done well in numbers, and Nigerians have done their list of where they think they failed and how it's affecting their lives. And I think for me, by far, that's more important than telling me that foreign reserves has increased. And so what?
Okay. Now, on a final note, how do we ensure that the negative impact that we've had to face from NSAS, that we don't see that happening? We've talked about people still being in detention, post NSAS. How do we ensure that we can preserve and protect the rights of protesters who will go out to protest today?
Two things, and I wish I knew some of them off the top of my head, but please check EIA's Twitter handle for those watching. There are numbers that people can call if anything happens, you get arrested or you need legal aid. But I do say the biggest way to prevent what happened after NSAS is for the government to do its job. There are known criminals, and we've given the examples. There were people parading on Lagos Island, threatening people from coming out to protest. I was on the call with the IG of police 2 days ago, or whatever day that was. He was told about and asked if he had seen the video. He hadn't seen the video. Someone said they would share it with him, and he said nothing to it. Till today, as we're talking now, nothing has been done. So when you know, and it's the same people, party members who you call thugs or party boys during elections, and we know how they're mobilized, who become hoodlums, quote and unquote, when there's time for protest. So when you know who's mobilizing who, we saw the people who are threatening that if you come out to protest, there will be violence, and you don't do anything against them. It would almost imply that the state is backing them because they've chosen not to do anything. So the best way to prevent anything happening and protecting citizens and security of the people and the welfare of the people is for the government to choose to do their jobs and ensure that people are protected.
All right.
All right. Thank you so much for joining us. I guess in the next few hours, we'll find out how things have turned out with the protest. Yemi Adamaleko, it's a pleasure to have spoken with you.
Thank you.
All right. We'll go on a break now. When we return, we have more conversations, and we'll also be heading to Abuja to bring you updates regarding what the state of the nation is like today. Stay with us. Breaking news. Information reaching us is that ID has been reported to have killed at least 19 people and injured another 15 people in Borno State at a local tea joint in Kanuri. Our correspondent Umaru Kirawa is on standby and has more details. Good morning, Umaru Kirawa. What's the update regarding the ID detonation?
Yes, a very good morning. We just had information of IED exploding at a local tea joint at Kawuri yesterday night. And fortunate enough, the casualties were brought to the state specialist hospital in Maiduguri. I went there, I was at the ward where the casualties are receiving treatment. But unfortunately, 19 people were reported dead, and some of the casualties are also receiving treatment at the primary health center in Kawuri, under Kondoga local government area. So far, this is the information we have at hand.
And do we know?
We feed you up with.
Do we know how this IED exploded? Do we know who is behind it? Do we have information in that regard?
Well, so far, nobody can behind the IED, but it's obvious.
All right.
All right. It does seem that we're having some form of network challenge with Umar Kirawa. As we proceed with the show, we'll have him join us again when we have better network, and we'll bring you more updates regarding the explosion that has happened in Borno. But for now, we'd like to ask that citizens in Borno State, in Kanuri, please be safe, and if you notice any suspicious activity around you, do well to report to the nearest police station.
All right. Now let's get into other conversations. This morning, Nigeria's inflation rate has been increasing for 16 consecutive months. The hunger situation in the nation has driven youths to a protest starting today. In a live broadcast yesterday at a ministerial press briefing, the Secretary to the Government of the Federation, Senator George Akume, shared the achievements of the Tinubu administration so far, pleading with protesters to cancel the planned demonstration. He highlighted steps that the federal government has taken to cushion the effect of the hunger situation in the nation.
Approval for 70,000 minimum wage, 20 trucks of rice to be distributed to each Nigerian state, the removal of tariffs on imported goods, and many other interventions were referenced. Here is a clip of the Minister of Finance, Wale Edun, at the ministerial press briefing yesterday.
And that of many people in this country and even beyond is that the protest would remain peaceful and orderly, such that the gains that have been made over the last 12 to 15 months should not be dissipated, that the momentum that has been achieved in turning around the Nigerian economy should not be dislodged, disturbed, or dislocated. I think amongst many other well-meaning Nigerians, the President truly understands the concerns that are being expressed, particularly the high and elevated cost of living, which is not peculiar to Nigeria at this stage.
Well, that was, of course, Wale Edun detailing the achievements, or some of the achievements of the government and the plans that they also taken to curtail the hunger across the country. Now, joining us is Otumba Segun Shoumi, member of the PDP. Good morning, and thanks for joining us.
Good morning, Nigerians. Good morning, News Central.
Good to have you. You don't seem very excited by Wale Edun's speech. And of course, you know, the details that he has also shared as to what the government is doing to curtail the hunger, the 20 trucks of rice that have been shared across the country, the increase of minimum wage to 70,000 naira. Why do you think, you know, these things are maybe not enough?
Well, I don't know what to say about not being enough. If I were to respond to them as an opposition political party, which I am, I would say, what were they thinking in the last 14 months? It's like they preferred to put the people under pressure, boil them until they are ready to explode, and then rush to television. Some of them speak very lowly, like they're in their bedroom, Some of them, like Dele Alaki, scream and shout on the people like they are speaking about people's head. Someone like Bakabio joke about and says while people are protesting, they will be eating, representing the gluttonic and wasteful regime that they are. The president, who the people have given a mandate, has refused to speak to the people. And now, because we are more responsible than them, we're the ones that are now having to douse tension and not inflame the situation. If you flip it back to when they were in opposition, by now, Tunde Bakare will be in Eagle Square, Bola Tinubu will be holding hands with him, Muhammadu Buhari will be marching, and they'll be pumping their fists and acting like they don't know the country they are running. The shoe is on the next leg now. In the last 1 year, look at the number of protests they have had to contain. It took them forever for them to diffuse that of labor. Like they need 1,000 years to be able to decide just a paltry 70,000 naira. The people have been screaming about they want to protest, end hunger, end bad government and all that. It's a reasonable government would have started trimming the pork around them, probably address the nation, probably tell them we're having a slash in our own salary, probably tell them that we're going to reduce the number of needless aid. There are many things that a feeling government can do. So when they come last minute, 24 hours before a strike, gather themselves as if they are in church, everybody saying whatever they like. None of those guys were elected. The person that was elected is President Bola Tinubu. His daughter has backed out the Nigerian people. His ministers have spoken as they can speak. The man that got the job is not even available to tell the Nigerians that, I hear you, I'll do something about it. I will join my voice with those who are saying to the protesters, for the love of our country, take it easy today. Be moderate in your rhetorics. Your demand is clearly well known. The protest is already successful because obviously that's what everybody in the country is talking about. But if the country be ours, we have a bigger responsibility to protect our infrastructure, to protect our national reputation, and to show to the world that the Gen Z generation in Nigeria are a generation ready for leadership, and therefore they can control themselves. They can make their point without allowing it to overheat. They can avoid anything that will make things go ugly. They can then close it, waiting for the reaction. Okay. Because to be fair to government, it's not very easy for them to get the message and articulate and then run it and then impact it. And like I've been saying, the demagogy, the language of conversation in a democracy is not the same like when you are in a military dictatorship. And once we are in a democracy, we must understand that elections have consequences. All of these energies that we're putting on the table now, we must make sure that we are aware that our right to choose means that we must show up when the elections are coming. All right. We can punish them with the election in Edo. We can punish them with the election in Ondo. Yeah, but there is no reason for a political party that is not doing well to be winning standalone elections. All Absolutely. Right.
Before we get into the election conversation, let's actually see what the situation with today's planned protest is at Lekki 1. We do have our correspondent there, Ni Omoni, but he will have him, join us shortly to share with us. All right, he's currently in Alausa. Let's have him join us to share what's happening shortly.
Well, he's not. Right. I mean, we'll get to Ni in a bit.
All right. Okay, so let's talk about what your expectations are post. You've talked about their body language before now, and while all of this is happening in the last 24 hours. Now, this protest holds today. They state their demands. There are several demands we've seen. In some cases, there are 10 demands, 15 demands, but the central message is people want a better quality of life. They want to be able to be guaranteed security. There are conversations about electoral reforms. There's so many key angles that have been discussed. What are your thoughts regarding how, what to expect in the next 10 days and how the government will respond to that?
I think that I believe that 10 days is too long. An economy that is slowed down for 1 day has its real cost. How much more when you slow it down for 10 days? We cannot project to the world that this is not a nation that is ready to do business, whatever the government may be doing. So first of all, I would prefer that they scaled it down to maybe about 3 days, so that you don't need to be screaming and screaming and screaming when they've heard you already. I don't believe that we can really be asking for anything other than for government to sit up. You cannot overrun a democracy by protest in the first year or maybe the second year. So I think that the issues that have been put on the table, government can speak deliberately to them. For instance, the request for a reform of the elections speaks to the integrity of even government. For if people do not believe that their votes count, if people do not believe that the election has integrity, it means that whoever becomes the president or whatever is going to be struggling with saying that I won legitimately. And the ones that did not win will have the opportunity to be screaming that they rigged. So for all of our sanity, we need to address that.
All right.
But to address that, it will require legislation and it will require INEC. So that can happen in 1 day. In the business of let us make life easy for all people, we can say to ourselves, truthfully and honestly, that that conversation should happen at our state. Because the land for farming is not in the federal, it's not in Abuja. The people's salaries and all that are not all paid in the federal government. So we need to put a bit more pressure on our governors to scale up their own responsibility to making life easy for us and be more responsible to governance.
All right.
Then in terms of what the federal government should do, I think the federal government knows what is right.
All right. Let's see what the current situation is in Alausa. We have our correspondent, Niyi Omoni, who will be bringing us a live feed. Good morning, Niyi. Thank you for joining us. Talk to us about what the current situation is in Alausa. Did the protesters come out? Is it relatively peaceful? What's going on where you are?
Okay, so I'd just like to start by saying that these anti-government protesters, not the protesters themselves, and I'd like to, sorry, please, I just want to use this. They're called the Defend Nigeria movement, sorry, please, sir. And these are their mantras, and these are what they're trying to call for. Starting with defending the people, defending the city, saying no to violent protest, supporting peaceful protest, and promoting a progressive agenda. And just to my left-hand side there, we just spoke with the convener, Mr. Razak who has been speaking to the press, and they've been here for about an hour speaking about how they don't want violence in Lagos State, how they want people have the right to protest, no doubt that the protesters can come out to air their views, but they do not want violence in Nigeria, citing various examples from the NSAS protest to other protests that has happened across the state. And you know, they are still granting a lot of interviews, but one of the things they harped on is the fact that violence must not be involved in this protest. We also have news that the protesters themselves will be coming at around 30 minutes to this time, and we'll see what their own say will be. They were actually supposed to gather at the Lagos State Assembly, in front of the Lagos State Assembly, but they said they didn't get permission to actually gather there, and that's why they're here. So probably in the next few minutes, the protesters themselves will find their way probably here or to the Lagos State Assembly, depending on what they choose.
Maybe, maybe not. You know, we'll see how things turn out. You know, I did say earlier that it's still early in the day, you know, and, you know, hopefully in the next hour, maybe more, you know, we might see some action. But it seems pretty peaceful, and I think everyone is preaching pretty much the same message, that nobody wants violence. And so we would definitely, if you can speak with Razak Olokoba anytime that you're there, please let us know so we can have a one-on-one conversation with him this morning, Niyi. Would that be fine?
Surely.
Okay, absolutely.
Yeah, I tried engaging him earlier. We spoke with him earlier, but I want to have a one-on-one with him for the interview, so that, but he's still quite engaged with the press for now.
Thanks very much. You know, it's pretty interesting, you know, seeing how it's turning out in Alausa. We'll join you again. I'll bring you in again pretty soon. Thanks a lot. All right. Let's go back to Otumba Segun Shoumi, who, of course, is joining us from the Federal Capital Territory. Do we still have you, sir?
Yes, you do. Yes, you do.
All right. So quickly, one of the things that has been mentioned this week, is that 14 months into the current administration, the fact that there is already calls for a protest is a straight report card of how the government has fared since it came into office. And it also shows that a lot of Nigerians do not trust that they're being led in the right direction. So I would like your analysis along with the idea that before President Muhammadu Buhari came into office, he had contested about three times. He fought tirelessly to become Nigeria's president, eventually became Nigeria's president, and then turns out to be, by all metrics, one of Nigeria's worst performing presidents after fighting that hard. So it's pretty much the same thing with President Bola Tinubu that we're seeing now, that he took some time and he did a lot of fighting to take this position. Why do you think it's not turning out exactly the way that he promised?
Okay, well, I think that this is a very good question. For a very long time, I've asked myself, privately and in research opportunities, now why is it that every leader comes in Nigeria, while he's on the saddle, he doesn't seem to be appreciated. When he leaves, then he becomes appreciated based on the new one, and that circle continues. I think that at the heart of that problem is the governance and development philosophy that the country is running. If you run a neoliberal economic policy, at the heart of that is you'll be deceiving yourself that constant devaluation of your currency is brilliance. And the reality is that once you devalue your currency constantly, you do at least 4 terrible things to your nation. The first is that you increase the cost of buying anything that you import. The second is that you deplete the savings of your people, because if they had saved 1 million naira when it was 1-to-1, which is $1 million, the more you devalue it, the more you make their savings useless. You make it extremely difficult for your industrialists to be able to buy equipment and sell at a reasonable rate. Then you need a quantum of money to allow the people to be able to afford basic things, which will impact inflation. And consistently, all of them have been doing that. So it gets worse with every administration. Then it is made worse by the language of campaign. When you look at 220 or whatever a number may be, you pump in so much hope, you pump in so much propaganda, you make light of the effort of the person in charge, the expectation becomes gargantuanly high. And then you are getting onto the saddle, and the reality of how hard it is to maintain that reality, to run things well, will hit you. In the case of Asiwaju Bola Ahmed Tinubu's government, his biggest undoing is that he couldn't keep the people that worked very hard to bring him on board involved in his government. He literally formed his government by himself, making it appear as if he created a government for himself and his friends and his cronies and his family members. And people who are supposed to help him de-escalate across the length and breadth of Nigeria, some of them are angry, some of them are doing sit-down look, some of them are instigating people with their comments at the back end. And because he inherited, to be fair to him, he inherited a tough situation. His hasty desire to exit it, because really he will eventually exit it if he continues, has left a whole lot of people behind. Because when your eyes is on how to make sure that you can pay foreign people that we owe, you can get enough money to buy a yacht, you can get money to be able to do the house of the vice president, you can get money to buy a new plane and all that, and it takes you 14 months to think about how to increase the salary of civil servant, you are then going to ask yourself, what about the people that don't even get a salary? It took you almost a year to be able to clean up your social register. Instead of that, you started giving money to governors to be doing whatever they wanted with it. You stepped away from a change of currency. which could have reduced the currency circulation, which could have helped you to tame inflation, and it could have taken away all the rogue money that is just playing around the black market. You kept your oil and gas industry extremely, not well run. You retain your NNPC chairman, what's the name, MD,
right.
Mille, or what is it called?
Okay. Mr.
When everybody is screaming and shouting that is where the problem is, the price of landing cost of fuel is increasing. You have not told the people how you are bridging it. You are effectively running a voodoo economy.
All right.
And
Mr.
if most people in the country can't feed and can't live well,
if you permit me to interject at this time, I'd like to please ask that you give us a few minutes. We want to hear from the DPO. He's speaking. We have the DPO in Alausa Division, Tokumbo Abaniwanda. He's speaking. Let's hear what he has to say regarding this. We also have Mr. Razak Olokoba, who is currently on camera. Mr. Razak Olokoba would be reacting to this as well.
No, you mentioned that you didn't want to go to Ganifa or Yemi Park because you have been tagged. Can you just explain more on that?
Yes, because we say no to violence and we say no to putting something that brings crowd around without introducing a safety measure. That was our crime. We have seen what happened during NSAS, that the methodology adopted was what led to what has happened. I've been doing protests all the days of my life, and I know how any protest will end the moment it begins. The way this one emerged, 10 days of rage, all those are slogans and language that incite and plot people against each other. So, and that's our crime. And for me, I can't it an irresponsible radicalism. If you refuse to tell yourself the truth, or to say that the country must collapse and the country must come, it's inciting. I will never be part of such. So, and that's how we gather here today, to make our own point that we don't want a violent protest. Our people has gone through enough already. We don't want to compound it. We want hunger to end truly, but we don't want hunger to end. The process will not end our life. We don't want such to happen, and that's why we are here.
So quickly, you spoke about a means of identification for your own members. What is this means of identification, and how long do you plan to stay?
This is our bandana.
This banner.
Outside the pressmen, anybody that doesn't have this bandana is not one of us.
You mean this white one?
Yeah, white, all these multicolored ones.
Okay.
Is our identification. Those are things we introduce to guiding our people to be able to know that truly we are confined in a place, and these are your people. Anybody that want to infiltrate us now, we identify him. When I led a protest to Shell early this year on the cleanup of Ogoni, people infiltrated us. We were quickly identified because of safety measures we have introduced. So our message is clear. People can protest, but we don't want a violent protest.
How long do you plan to stay here for?
It's ended already. We have made our point.
So you're leaving now?
I'll be leaving now. It's ended already. Thank you very much.
All right. Thank you very much. So you've heard from the convener of Defend Nigeria movement, Mr. Razak Olokoba. He has spoke about the fact that they didn't gather at Ganifa or Yemi Park because they have been tagged as government-sponsored group, and because they feel that people have tagged them that they are going to foment trouble during the protest. That's why they chose to have their own rally. He said they are not convening on the protest. It's a rally here at Alausa, and they didn't go to the Lagos State Assembly as earlier planned because it has been barricaded. Now, he also mentioned the fact that they are against any form of violence whatsoever on the street, and he showed us a means of identification for his own team, which is like a cloth material tied around their arm. I don't know specifically if it's the left arm or the left arm or the right arm, but it's tied around their wrist, pardon me, and it could be multicolored or it could be a pure white or cream material. Now, they are done, and as you see, they're about to disperse. We had the divisional police, sorry, let me just check a name of Alausa earlier, who also visited here to monitor how things had been. The DPO Alausa Division, Tokumbo Abaniwanda, she was here earlier, and she was asking the conveners what happened, why are they here? Do they know that they are not supposed to gather anywhere else aside the Ganifa Yemi Park, which was approved by the Lagos State government and of course the police? And as you can see them on my far right there, they are still there just monitoring, just to see the compliance of these people, the the Defend Nigeria movement, who has said they are going to disperse just as they finish their rally. The police are there just monitoring what is happening, and as you can see around, some people are also hanging around. People who I can't see that particular tag on their hands. I can't see that particular tag on their hands. I have some here that have the tags on their hands, while others do not have the tag on their hands. So hopefully in the next few minutes we should see all these people disperse, and others onlookers that you can see there, I'm sure they're just looking and waiting, watching what will unfold as time goes on today.
Also for sharing that with us. Interesting turn of events there. We'll, of course, we'll follow up in different parts of the country and continue to bring updates to our viewers this morning. Thanks a lot, Nii. Let's go back to Otumba Shegun-Shoumi. Otumba, if you can still hear us, you know, you were detailing earlier some of the mistakes that the government had made with its policies, its economic policies and the likes, you know, that may have led us to where we are today. But yesterday they did put out, you know, a quick statement, you know, titled "Trust the Process," where they detailed, you know, what foreign reserves were when they came into office at $34 billion. Now it's $37 billion. Ways and means at 27 trillion naira, now 16 trillion. Minimum wage at 30,000 naira, now 70,000 naira. The forex backlog of $7 billion has been cleared. Oil production was 900,000 barrels per day, now 1.6 million barrels per day. And also our debt to revenue ratio was 97% before, now 64% according to them. And it ends with saying, believe in President Bola Ahmed Tinubu. So just get your quick reactions to that. From their analysis, they believe that they're doing very well and Nigerians should be patient. Do you in any way agree with this?
No, look, like I always say to people, you don't have a right to talk if you cannot be fair and objective. In terms of what they are trying to do on paper and how the Bretton Woods organizations, their friends in IMF and all such organizations may rate them, why not? But where we will ask the solution, where we want to see growth, where we want to see hope, is in the faces and in the bellies of every Nigerian from every corner of the country. A child that has not eaten, a family that does not have protein, a husband that cannot provide, people that, all of these peoples don't understand economic jargon. And that government of Bola Ahmed Tinubu and APC must be reminded that they have been in charge of this country for 9 years plus. So if people have been patient with them for 9 years plus, it was their responsibility to think about the low-hanging fruit. And the low-hanging fruit must be things that can make the Nigerians survive pending the day of their El Dorado. It's like telling the people to die while you are busy tilling the ground. They made a huge blunder by, when they removed the subsidy, they ought to have known that all their governors and all the local government chairmen must have been told to take the memo of go and open up acreage of land for planting. There's dry season planting farming in our country. There's wet season farming in our country. What did they use those periods for? Did they expect that the currency will not, that inflation will not impact the cost of food? And if the Nigerians have been patient for 14 months, look at how hard it took labor to get them to even do minimum wage. You put the subsidy away, so you claim. And you started getting the money from the very next month. What happened with increasing wage in 2 months, in 3 months, in 4 months, in 5 months? They made the situation worse for the country because labor kept striking and striking and striking and striking until their non-labor sons and daughters, the young people, have now joined into the fray. And they are trying to do all sorts of things. To God be the glory. All of the information available suggests that the protest is at least curtailed. People have been maybe persuaded to give the country a chance. And they must be very careful. At least on this occasion, the citizens gave them notice. If they recall what happened with the Arab Spring, it was spontaneous.
Yeah.
Because the issues the people face are the real issues of the people. You can't be communicating as a Senate president that, oh, let them strike while we eat. Did he even listen to himself? Does he imagine how he sounds? And when people are saying that they're talking about bad government. You can't be telling people you are buying a new plane, you are building a new house. That's not how to run these things.
All right. Just before we go.
The first people to show, the first people to show that they are trimming the pork or the money or austerity is the government itself.
Yeah.
Charity must begin from them.
Absolutely. I want to, because we're running out of time, I saw that you posted something on X that I would love that you react to or just share exactly what you meant by that. On your X page, it says, "Dear Nigerians of goodwill, my name is Segun Showumi. You are all witnesses to how I have been screaming that excessive Yoruba advantage in the Tinubu government is not right. Please, when power changes hands and they start eating their breakfast, remember." You go on to say that I'm not part of everything they are doing right now. I am sold to the idea of equity, fairness, and justice. Tell us just briefly the meaning of what you're saying here, the excessive Yoruba advantage.
Thank you. Thank you. When you look at the cabinet, and you have been monitoring cabinets in this country for a long time, you have to even ask, okay, so the only people that have brains now in Nigeria are the Lagos boys of Bola Ahmed Tinubu, like seriously? And that we don't have brilliant people in the north, we can't have brilliant people in the southeast, we can't find brilliant people in the south, we can't find brilliant people that can run economy anywhere else. And so you guys are, well, I wanted to put it on record. And the reason why I did that, if we institute a culture of, bigotry and clannishness, when power changes hand, where will I have the guts to tell the new man to take it easy when they start behaving that way? You have to be fair on yourself. You have to be fair on your brother. You have to, so that you can be fair on others. I'm not one of those ones who will agree that we should criticize Buhari and then be rubbing the head of Ashwaji Bola Tinubu because he's a Yoruba man. And he's no more Yoruba than me. And I say on behalf of all of us, imagine what they are doing now. People are coming out and bringing our revered old culture and our old tradition to be using it for protest. Is that like a joke? Are they going to destroy even our tradition because of their mismanagement of the country? And you don't want me to speak up? No, I'm not like that. I'm not made from that material.
All right.
I'll praise them when they do well, and I would scold them when they don't do well.
All right.
Are there a lot of like minds like yourself who believe that President Bola Tinubu, is mismanaging the whole Yoruba appointment thing, in his government? Is there a lot of people who feel that way?
The people that are Yorubas would like to say that let them take everything since it's their boys, their turn. Emilokon, now our turn. But sensible Nigerians from all other parts of the country who are more than just one clan will be saying, wait a minute. How come you have finance, you have CBN, you have custom, you have immigration, you have internal affairs, you have police? Come on.
All right. Otumba Segun Showumi, thank you so much for joining us this morning. We will be proceeding with updates regarding the protest. We hope that we can have you join us at a later date. But now, just to mention earlier that we did show a clip of the machines being tested. The water cannons being tested at the Lekki tollgate. So if you go there, that's the water cannon. Earlier, we had showed clips. We had broadcasted live clips of the water cannons being tested. So I guess they're just reminding us that they're ready and they're on standby. But now let's move away from the live updates to what Nigerians are saying right after this break. The Senate President, Godswill Akpabio, has come under fire for one of his controversial statements again. Now, this is not the first time that he's been called out for saying something that Nigerians have referred to as controversial. If you remember, there was a time he did say to his fellow senators that they will receive prayers in their emails. He came under fire for that. More recently is when he said to Senator Natasha Akpoti-Uduaghan that the plenary is not a nightclub, and he was called out for it. Eventually, he came back to apologize. This time around, he's been called out for being insensitive to Nigerians. Let's take a look at this video.
MD, I want to thank you for what you said. You said, we are not interested in regime change. Let us own this government. Those who want to protest can protest, but let us be there eating. Am I right? I must thank Niger Delta. So,
now, he made a statement at the Niger Delta Ethnic Nationalities Youth and Women Group Sensitization Conference in Port Harcourt, River State. And many Nigerians, especially on X, have not found it funny, as he's been criticized of being insensitive to the plight of Nigerians who ordinarily would not want to protest, but are forced to protest because that they are not comfortable with the way that things have been run in the country. A number of them not being able to afford the basic necessities of life, such as food. Nigerians have reacted on X, and the new hashtag trending, in addition to the initial demands for or by the protesters, is hashtag Akpabio must go. Let's look at some of the tweets on X that have detailed the complaints of Nigerians. Our al-Burhan says, Akpabio spoke down on Senator Natasha, Senator Ireti, and so many other senators. He apologized and we accepted. He spoke down on the market women and men involved in the fire accident. He apologized again, we accepted. Akpabio has now made a joke of Nigerian protesters and masses. We do not want an apology. We want resignation. Hashtag Akpabio must go. Away from Hawa, we have Chude Namdi, who says, Akpabio launched 10,000 youth beneficiary scheme in the 9 states of Niger Delta. They will be paid 50,000 naira every month by the NDDC. Why are they disbursing all this money now? Periodic giveaway can never take a country out of economic depression. Away from that, we have Aisha Yusufu, who says, Dear Senators, it is time to impeach Godswill Akpabio. It is still one of you that will replace him as Senate President. You will not encounter any resistance. Away from that, the next tweet says, from Usman Zana, he says, Akpabio's disdain for struggling Nigerians and his ineptitude as Senate President are clear. His mocking attitude and poor performance are unacceptable. It's time for him to step down. Hashtag Akpabio must go. The next tweet from talking about this is still Hawa al-Burhan, who says, Chief Senator Godswill Obot Akpabio, CON. We are giving you 10 days to resign. We are tired. Nigerian Senate chamber is not a motor park. It was never won. It can never be won. Enough is enough. The 10 days, of course, indicating the 10 days of the protest starting from today. This says, this man's resignation is our number request on the protest list. He has mocked us enough, starting from sending prayers to their inbox and making mockery of allowing the poor to breathe. Now he'll be eating while we are protesting. I believe he's making reference to a certain clip where he acted like he was moving in motion, asking, for the poor to breathe, and many people did not find it funny. The role of a Senate President is a hallowed role. The number 3 person, if anything happens to our President, our Vice President, that is our President. So it's important and imperative that he is conscious and careful of the way that he carries himself, of the things that he says, because every action will be interpreted to be in support or against the Nigerian people. And right now, he's not in their good graces. But that's all that we have to say on X regarding Akpabio must go. We'll head back now into the main conversations this morning to see what's happening around the country regarding the protests. Stay with us.
And of course, still following conversations concerning the nationwide protests, we've been covering all morning in Lausa, in Abia State, and of course at Lekki area of Lagos. We're joined this morning, of course, by Dr. John, who's going to be sharing his thoughts on things so far. Good morning, Mr. Ojon.
Good morning.
We've, of course, had a pretty interesting morning. First of all, I noticed that there was barely any cars on the road.
Yeah.
And then our correspondent at the Lekki tollgate, of course, noticed that there was a bus that dropped off some NURTW staff or members. Allows, of course, has a say no to violence group that has also been there. But let's get your views on today, how things have played out so far, and if you genuinely believe that Nigerians are ready to demand better governance.
Okay, I think democracy has given us an opportunity, the freedom to do anything that is within the ambit of the law. One of them is protest, and also another one is refusing to protest, as the case may be. And tracing back to history, I have repeatedly mentioned that when you hear of protest, usually it doesn't lead to violence. It is when we introduce resistance to protest that we always have all of this issue. So we have this freedom, but again, the normative theory of the press says that there's what they call the libertarian theory that gives freedom, and just after that, there's a social responsibility theory. So you have a freedom in your hand, and there's a responsibility that is attached to that freedom. For example, the government has a freedom to make life better for the people, so to say, and this freedom extends to the area of responsibility. So if you fail in that responsibility, then the other people also have the freedom to call you to order. And that's why you see, naturally, in ourselves as human beings, people talk about high blood pressure, and they talk about low blood pressure. And I got to understand that low blood pressure is actually equally very dangerous. So the state of low blood pressure is a state of inactivity. And when your government gets to this point that, oh, anything goes, you discover that they continue to do whatever it is that pleases them until we have people who come out to say, oh, enough is enough. And coming out to say does not mean that they have to necessarily hit the street. Like what we have today now. In the last 1 week, the policy announcement of this government, I doubt whether they've made it in the last 1 year. And this is owing to the fact that they can see genuinely that people are concerned about the policy direction of the government. They are concerned about the direction of the nation. They are concerned about the insensitivity on the part of so many of their governors. So it is very clear that I got on the road as early as 6:30 this morning. I didn't see anybody. It shows that without a public holiday, that the protest has actually achieved majorly what it's meant to achieve, which is actually waking up the government to its responsibility. And I think this is actually a good one for everyone.
All right. I mean, we can only wait to see how today will turn out. Like you said, you think that the protest has already achieved what it's meant to achieve, and it's made the government sit up. The citizens, we're seeing a number of citizens who are protesting protesting against the protests. I mean, you've heard about a number of them. But let's also talk about the role of the police. I had spoken, asked an earlier guest, but I'd like to ask you, the role of the police in guaranteeing the safety and security of protesters. What we've seen in the past few days is a very strong show of force, as opposed to, it does seem like some would say that it is an effort to maybe intimidate young protesters who will come out to let them know that if you do anyhow, you see anyhow, right? So let's talk about the role of the police to protect, to guarantee the safety and the security of the Nigerian citizens, and how well they are, they have carried on with that, bearing in mind that these regulations and rules that they have given to the protesters maybe have not been given to those who were protesting against the protest. Okay,
can we start from those that are protesting against the protest? And in my background studying politics and my little involvement, I discovered that there's something that is always peculiar. It's just like a political rally. When people gather in a political rally and they return home, now those people that they go there to meet in a political rally return to affluence. Those who come from community polling unit and war return back to their poverty. So majority of those people who are carrying placards to protest against something today will also return to their poverty. I saw the picture of people who protested, who were cursing people in Ikorodu side of Lagos. And of course, Ikorodu has a special place in my heart. And I look at the picture very carefully. I saw that these guys are still going to return to poverty, because you can even tell from the bedroom slippers that some of them are wearing that they came from poverty. So it is not a matter of whether you come to protest against. It is what becomes of you after whatever it is that you have expressed, whether for or against. So I only pity us because all of these things will continue to happen. If we have a country of 200 and something million people, and just a little percentage of them are those that are genuinely interested in how they are governed. For instance, you can ask a lot of Nigerians today, they don't even care any longer. It's like government inactivity had driven them to a point of, oh, whatever happens, let it happen. So I'm telling you that those that are protesting against are actually sponsored. And I'm saying this from the point of experience. They are actually sponsored.
Or at least promised.
Of course, you will see what will happen. And I'm going to tell you my experiences and tell you, when you get to a political rally or a situation like this, when you organize people there, usually the organizer is not the one that pays people directly. He gives money, let's use 2,000 naira to somebody to settle them. Meanwhile, the person you gave the money to has also not eaten. So he removes 500 naira from the money. At the end of the day, the calculation they made of about 2,000 naira per person, you discover that only about 50 or 60% of them will be taken care of. That is why you see that after every political rally, there's always rancor. So you will see in the evening today now, you see that people will begin to protest against the people that are supposed to protest.
Well, I already did see that yesterday.
And it's a sorry state. Now let's talk about the role of the police. And I say that if not because of the fact that they have guiding ethics, you will have seen Nigerian policemen taking the forefront in this protest. Because like every Nigerian, their condition of service is nothing to write home about. And I've continuously agitated. You see, in 2011, I have worked closely with the police. I started what they call the Police Youth Connect. The idea is to ensure that the police understands the mentality of the Nigerian people. But in 2024, you still discover that they still that disconnect. When they release press statement, of course, I take the press statement to dissect and look at it. You discover that they are releasing press statement not to win the citizens over. They are releasing press statement like a politician. So the police, as we speak now, is almost part of the political class because it takes directive from the political class and it does not have the capacity to actually correct the political class. Not just because whosoever pays the piper, but in reality, there's been a mixture in the Nigerian state. Nobody seems to be able to win anything without partnership with the police. Nobody seems to be able to run a glorious community without partnership of the police. So we have unconsciously dragged our police, credible police force, into politicking. And now they are maybe at the forefront of politicking. So when a politician talks, they just think that the way to do is to actually respond to the community with force.
Yeah, all right. Dr. John, we're out of time. Thank you very much for stopping by. We, of course, need to remind our viewers that we still have our correspondents out in the streets across Lagos and across the country this morning, and we're bringing you live updates as things turn out here in Nigeria on the End Bad Governance protest all through today. Thank you very much for joining us once again.
It's a pleasure. Thank you.
And it's time for us to say goodbye. We'll be back here again tomorrow morning on Breakfast Central. I am Osaogi Ogbawa.
And lest I forget, we know it's a new month, so whilst we're all talking about protests, Happy New Month. I am Olive Mwadi. See you tomorrow.